I never thought my own sister would steal $20,000 from our father using a credit card I left on my desk, but that night changed everything. The salt air hit my face as I walked out of the San Pedro cargo terminal, my boots heavy with exhaustion. It was nearly midnight, and I had just finished a 14-hour shift coordinating shipments for one of the busiest ports on the West Coast. My muscles ached, my clothes smelled like diesel and ocean brine, and all I wanted was to collapse into bed. The sound of ship horns echoed across the water as massive cargo vessels lined the docks, their lights creating an industrial constellation against the dark Pacific sky. This was my life now, had been for the past 3 years since I graduated with my logistics degree. Practical, dependable, always planning for tomorrow. The contrast between my life and my younger sister Brooke's couldn't have been starker. While I spent my days in steel-toed boots managing container shipments and dealing with customs documentation, Brooke floated through life in designer sundresses. Her Instagram feed a carefully curated gallery of brunch spots in Venice Beach, sunset yoga sessions in Malibu, and shopping hauls from Rodeo Drive. She was 23, 2 years younger than me, and had never held a job for more than 3 months. Our father, Douglas Mitchell, a successful commercial real estate developer, had always indulged her. Mom, Carol, enabled it with her constant refrain of "she's still finding herself." I pulled into the driveway of our family home in Palos Verdes, a sprawling ranch-style house with an ocean view that Dad had bought during the real estate boom. The lights were still on in the living room. I found Dad in his home office, squinting at his computer screen with obvious frustration. "Chloe, thank God you're home," he said, rubbing his temples. "This damn website keeps rejecting my payment. I've been trying to order that Rolex we talked about for the Anderson client closing gift. The transaction won't go through." "Let me take a look," I said, pulling up a chair. I had helped Dad with his online purchases before. For someone who could negotiate million-dollar property deals, he was surprisingly helpless with e-commerce. "You know what?" he said, reaching for his wallet. "I have an early meeting tomorrow. Can you just handle this for me? Use this card." He pulled out his platinum credit card and grabbed a post-it note, scribbling down his PIN. "The watch is in my bookmarks. Just order it tonight if you can, or tomorrow is fine too. I trust you." He handed me both the card and the yellow sticky note with the PIN written in his bold handwriting. I set them on my desk in the corner of the living room, next to my laptop. It was a small workspace, nothing fancy, just a place where I could catch up on emails and do some freelance consulting work I had started taking on. I was building towards something, saving money, making connections. Unlike Brooke, I had a plan. "Sure, Dad. I'll take care of it." "You're a lifesaver, kiddo. I don't know what I'd do without you." He kissed the top of my head and headed upstairs. I was about to start working on the order when I heard a knock at the door. Ryan, my boyfriend of 8 months, stood on the porch with takeout bags and that easy smile that had first caught my attention at a supply chain conference. "Thought you might be hungry after your shift," he said, holding up Thai food from our favorite spot in San Pedro. "You're perfect," I said, letting him in. We settled on the couch, and I told him about my day while we ate pad thai straight from the containers. Ryan noticed the credit card and post-it note on my desk. "Hey, babe," he said, his tone shifting slightly. "You should probably put those away. Leaving a card and PIN just sitting out like that, it's kind of risky." I laughed, waving off his concern. "Risky?" "Ryan, this is my house. There's nobody here who would take it. It's just family." I know. Just being cautious. You never know." "I'll deal with it after I eat. I'm too tired to think about watches right now." We finished dinner. Ryan left around 1 in the morning, and I trudged upstairs, completely forgetting about the card and PIN still sitting on my desk. It was a mistake that would prove fatal, though at the time, I couldn't have imagined my own sister would betray me so completely. The next evening, I finally sat down to order Dad's watch. I entered all the information, selected overnight shipping, and clicked the final confirmation button. The screen loaded for a moment, then flashed red with an error message. "Transaction declined. Insufficient funds." I stared at the screen, confused. Dad's credit limit was $50,000. A $5,000 watch shouldn't have triggered a decline. I tried again. Same message. A cold feeling crept into my stomach. I logged into Dad's credit card account using the password he had shared with the family for emergencies. What I saw made my blood run cold. The statement showed a shopping spree that would make a celebrity blush. Nordstrom Beverly Hills, $6,000. Gucci on Rodeo Drive, $4,000. A boutique in West Hollywood I'd never heard of, another $3,000. First-class plane tickets to Cabo San Lucas, $2,500. A resort booking at some luxury property in Mexico, $4,500. The transactions went on and on, all from yesterday afternoon and evening. The total was just over $20,000, maxing out most of Dad's available credit. My hands shook as I scrolled through the itemized list. Every purchase was time-stamped. They started at 2 in the afternoon, right after I had left for work, and continued through the evening. I felt sick. I heard the front door open, and laughter floated through the house. Brooke's voice, high and excited, chattering away on her phone. I know, right? I got the most amazing haul today. The leather jacket alone is to die for. And wait until you see the resort we're staying at in Cabo. Infinity pool, private beach access, the works. I'm flying out tomorrow morning. First class, obviously. I deserve this after all the stress I've been under trying to figure out my path. I walked into the living room and froze. Brooke stood there, literally surrounded by shopping bags. Nordstrom, Gucci, Prada, Saint Laurent. Glossy bags with rope handles, tissue paper peeking out from the tops. She was wearing a new outfit, tags still attached. Probably $1,000 worth of designer clothing on her body. Oh, hey, Chloe, she said, barely glancing at me as she continued her phone conversation. Yeah, I'm so ready for this trip. Okay, I'll call you later. Bye. She hung up and smiled at me, that same careless, entitled smile she'd worn since childhood. You will not believe the day I had. I mean, I absolutely killed it shopping. Look at this jacket. She held up a buttery soft leather jacket that probably cost more than my monthly rent would if I weren't still living at home. I stared at her, my mind racing, pieces clicking into place. Cabo? You're going to Cabo? How exactly are you paying for that, Brooke? Her smile flickered for just a moment. Oh, I've been saving up. Saving up? From what job? You quit the gallery reception position after 3 weeks. She rolled her eyes. God, Chloe, do you have to be so judgmental about everything? Not all of us want to spend our lives in greasy cargo terminals. Some of us have different priorities. Different priorities? I repeated slowly. My eyes moved to my desk, where the credit card and post-it note had been. They were gone. Brooke, where's Dad's credit card? What are you talking about? The credit card that was on my desk, the one with the PIN written on a sticky note. Where is it? Her face flushed slightly, but she kept her composure. I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe you misplaced it. I didn't misplace it, and I know you took it. I just looked at Dad's statement. $20,000, Brooke. $20,000. For a moment, she looked like she might continue denying it. Then her expression changed, hardening into something almost defiant. Oh, please. Like Dad can't afford it. He spends more than that on his stupid business dinners and golf club memberships. I saw the card just sitting there, pin written right on the note like an invitation. You were basically asking for someone to use it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you insane? That's stealing, Brooke. That's fraud. It's not fraud when it's family. It's called borrowing. Besides, you're always going on about how I need to enjoy life more. Live a little. Well, guess what? I am. I'm going to Cabo tomorrow, and I'm going to have the time of my life. Consider it an early birthday present from Dad. A birthday present he doesn't know he's giving? Do you even hear yourself? She shrugged, gathering her bags. You're just jealous because you spend all your time working like a dog while I actually know how to live. Maybe if you weren't so uptight all the time, you'd understand. Before I could respond, the front door slammed open. Dad stood in the doorway, his face red, a paper in his hand. Mom trailed behind him, looking worried. Who the hell spent $20,000 on my credit card? Dad's voice boomed through the house, making the windows rattle. I just got a fraud alert on my phone. $20,000 in one day. Who did this? Brooke dropped one of her shopping bags, her face draining of color. The defiant mask slipped away, replaced by genuine fear. I'd seen Dad angry before, but never like this. Douglas, please, let's talk about this calmly. Mom started, but he cut her off with a sharp gesture. Calmly? Someone stole $20,000 from me, Carol. There's nothing calm about that. He looked between me and Brooke, his eyes finally landing on the shopping bags scattered around my sister. His expression shifted from fury to something worse, betrayal and disappointment. Brooke. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation, a statement of fact, and a world of hurt all rolled into one word. The next morning, Dad convened what he called a family meeting in the living room. He had printed out the credit card statement and laid it on the coffee table next to Brooke's plane ticket confirmation and hotel reservation, both of which he had found in her email after demanding access to her laptop. Explain, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Explain to me how you thought this was acceptable. Brooke sat on the couch, her earlier bravado completely gone. She looked small, scared, like a child caught doing something terrible. Dad, I can explain. I didn't think. You didn't think. That's the problem, isn't it? You never think about consequences, about other people, about anything beyond what you want in the moment. It wasn't like that, Brooke tried, her voice cracking. I saw the card there, and I thought maybe it would be okay to borrow it. I was going to tell you eventually. Borrow? I cut in, my voice sharp. You don't borrow someone's credit card without asking, Brooke. You stole it. You committed fraud. I didn't steal anything. It's family money, and Dad always. Always what? Dad interrupted. always lets you get away with everything? Maybe that's true. Maybe your mother and I have been too lenient with you. But this? He gestured at the statement. This is criminal. You understand that, right? I could call the police right now. Mom gasped. Douglas, she's your daughter. And she's a thief. The words hung in the air, brutal and undeniable. Brooke started crying, mascara running down her face. Dad, please. I'm sorry. I'll pay you back, I promise. It was stupid. I know it was stupid. Pay me back with what money? You don't have a job. You don't have any savings. You've never saved $1 in your life. I had been watching this exchange from my position by the window. Part of me felt a grim satisfaction watching Brooke finally face consequences for once in her life. But another part, a smaller part, felt a twinge of pity. She looked genuinely devastated. Dad, I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. I have an idea, if you want to hear it. I'm listening. I pulled out my laptop and opened a document I had drafted early that morning after barely sleeping. A payment contract. Legally binding. Brooke agrees to pay back every cent of the $20,000. She gets a job, any job, and every paycheck goes directly into your account until the debt is cleared. With interest, say, 5% annually. Dad looked at the screen, then at Brooke, then at me. A slow smile spread across his face, though it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a businessman who had just found the perfect solution to a problem. I like it. Chloe, send that to my email. I'll have my lawyer look it over and make it official. No, Brooke said, her voice rising. No, that's insane. I'm not signing some kind of indentured servitude contract. Then you can face criminal charges. Dad said flatly. Those are your options, Brooke. Sign the contract and pay back what you stole, or I call the police and you deal with the legal system. Your choice. Mom tried to intervene. Douglas, surely we can work something out as a family without all this legal. No, Carol. For once in her life, Brooke is going to face real consequences. She's going to learn what it means to work for something, to be responsible, to understand that actions have consequences. The contract was drawn up by Dad's attorney within 2 days. It was ironclad. Brooke would pay back $20,000 plus 5% annual interest. She would provide proof of employment within 2 weeks. All income would be directly deposited into an account accessible by Dad. Failure to comply would result in immediate legal action for credit card fraud. Brooke signed it in the dining room on a Thursday evening, her hands shaking as she wrote her name. When she finished, she threw the pen down on the table with such force it bounced off and clattered to the floor. Happy now? She spat, looking at me with pure hatred. You got what you wanted. You always do, don't you? Perfect, Chloe, who never makes mistakes, who always does the right thing. You must be thrilled watching me suffer. This isn't about me, I said quietly. You did this to yourself. Bullshit. You could have just let it go. Dad would have gotten over it eventually. But no, you had to push for this contract thing, had to make sure I was punished. You know what? I hope you're happy. Because I'll never forgive you for this. Never. She stormed out of the room, and I heard her bedroom door slam so hard it shook the walls. Mom followed her, no doubt to offer comfort and reassurance that everything would be okay. That was Mom's role in our family dynamic. The peacekeeper, the soother, the one who always made excuses for Brooke. Dad stood and placed a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Chloe. I should have done something like this years ago. Maybe then she wouldn't have turned out so entitled. But even as he said it, I could see the pain in his eyes. For all his anger, for all the tough love he was trying to demonstrate, he was still her father. And watching your child face the consequences of their own terrible choices was its own kind of agony. I went to bed that night feeling hollow. I had won, if you could call it winning. Brooke would pay back the money, would learn responsibility, would finally grow up. But I had also gained something I never wanted, my sister's hatred. 2 weeks later, Brooke started working at Pacific Gateway Packaging, a seafood processing and shipping facility at the Los Angeles port. It was brutal work, 10-hour shifts in refrigerated warehouses, packing fish into containers, dealing with the overwhelming smell of the ocean in its least romantic form. The pay was $14 an hour, and every cent of it went straight into Dad's account per the contract. I knew about the job because I ran into her supervisor one day at the port. Small world, logistics community in Los Angeles. He mentioned having a new employee who was the daughter of Douglas Mitchell, and I put 2 and 2 together. How's she doing? I asked, genuinely curious. He grimaced. Honestly, terrible. She's late constantly, calls in sick at least once a week, and when she is here, she's on her phone half the time. I've written her up twice already. I'm only keeping her on because her father is who he is, and I don't want to burn that bridge. I thanked him for the information and walked away, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Part of me wanted Brooke to succeed, to prove she could turn things around. But a larger part of me wasn't surprised she was failing. This was who Brooke was. Someone who had never had to fight for anything, who had always had the safety net of Mom and Dad's money and indulgence. Real work, real responsibility, was completely foreign to her. One evening, about 6 weeks into Brooke's employment, I was driving through Wilmington on my way home from a client meeting. I needed to stop for gas and pulled into a station near the industrial district. As I was pumping gas, I noticed a familiar figure coming out of a pawn shop across the street. It was Brooke, carrying a shopping bag and looking around furtively before getting into her car. I finished pumping gas and, on impulse, went into the pawn shop. "Excuse me," I said to the clerk. "That woman who just left, with the dark hair, did she just sell something?" The clerk looked at me suspiciously. "Why do you want to know?" "She's my sister. I'm just curious." He shrugged. "Yeah, she sold a designer handbag. Gucci, I think. Got $300 for it. Probably worth a lot more, but we don't pay retail." $300. From a bag that probably cost $3,000 or $4,000. And that money wouldn't go to Dad, wouldn't go toward paying off her debt. It would go straight into Brooke's pocket for whatever she wanted. I didn't tell Dad about the pawn shop. Some part of me felt it would be too cruel, would push things past the point of no return. Brooke was already drowning, and adding another weight might actually kill her. Instead, I watched from a distance as her life slowly unraveled. Her Instagram feed, once a gleaming highlight reel of the perfect LA lifestyle, became sporadic and then stopped altogether. The friends who had filled her comments with heart emojis and "Yas Queen" gradually disappeared. Turns out people are only interested in being your friend when you can afford bottle service at trendy clubs and brunch at expensive restaurants. Mom started to change too, in ways that surprised me. One evening, about 3 months after the contract was signed, I overheard a conversation between her and Brooke. "Mom, I can't do this anymore," Brooke was saying, her voice thick with tears. "The work is too hard, my feet hurt all the time. I smell like fish no matter how much I shower. This isn't me. This isn't the life I'm supposed to have." I expected Mom to comfort her, to make soothing noises about how it would all be okay. Instead, there was a long pause before Mom spoke, her voice firmer than I'd ever heard it. "What life are you supposed to have, Brooke? One where everything is handed to you, where you never have to work, never have to struggle, never have to face any difficulty at all. I thought things would be different." "Different how? You made a choice, a terrible choice, and now you're living with the consequences. That's called being an adult." "But it's not fair." "Life isn't fair, sweetheart. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can actually start moving forward. You know who else's life isn't fair? Your sister's. She works 14-hour days at the port, doing work that's just as hard as what you're doing, if not harder. But she doesn't complain. She doesn't call in sick. She doesn't make excuses. She just does what needs to be done." Of course you're taking her side. Everyone always takes Chloe's side. "This isn't about sides, Brooke. This is about you growing up and taking responsibility for your own life. I love you, but I can't protect you from yourself anymore. You need to do that." I heard Brooke crying harder, and then footsteps as she retreated to her room. Mom came into the kitchen, saw me standing there, and gave me a sad smile. "You heard that?" "Yeah. I should have had that conversation with her years ago. I see that now. I thought I was being kind, being supportive, but I was really just enabling her to stay a child forever. I'm sorry, Chloe. I'm sorry I didn't see how unfair we were being to you, making you the responsible one while letting her coast through life." I didn't know what to say. In all my 25 years, I had never heard Mom acknowledge the different standards she and Dad held us to. "It's okay, Mom." "No, it's not. But maybe it's not too late to fix things, for all of us." While Brooke struggled and flailed, I flourished. The freelance logistics consulting work I had been doing on the side started to take off. I signed a mid-sized shipping company in Long Beach, then another in San Pedro. Word spread that I was good at what I did, that I could optimize supply chains and save companies money. My client roster grew. Dad noticed. He started asking me questions about my business, offering advice, making introductions to people in his network. For the first time, I felt like he actually saw me, not just as his reliable daughter who would handle whatever he needed, but as a professional, as someone with potential. "You should go out on your own full-time," he said one evening after I had helped him analyze a logistics issue for one of his commercial properties. "Start your own consulting firm. I'll be your first real client, pay you a proper retainer." "Dad, I can't just quit my job at the port. The insurance, the steady paycheck." "Chloe, you're making almost as much from consulting as you are from the port, and you're doing it on nights and weekends. Imagine what you could do if you committed to it full-time." "I believe in you. I should have said that more often over the years, but I'm saying it now. You have a gift for this. Don't waste it because you're too afraid to take a risk." His words planted a seed. Over the next few months, I carefully planned my transition. I saved every penny I could, built up my emergency fund, secured commitments from potential clients, and on a foggy Monday morning in April, I walked into my supervisor's office at the port and gave my 2 weeks' notice. "This is a mistake," Ryan said when I told him. We were having dinner at a restaurant in Redondo Beach, and his reaction wasn't what I had expected. "You're throwing away job security for something that might not work out." "It will work out. I have clients lined up, dad's support, a solid business plan. Your dad's support? You mean the same dad who made your sister sign a debt contract? What happens when you disappoint him too? I set down my fork, staring at him. What are you saying? I'm saying you're taking a huge risk, and I'm not sure it's worth it. What about our future? What about stability? Our future? Ryan, we've been together less than a year. I know, but I thought we were building towards something. A stable life, a house, kids, eventually. How does you starting a risky business fit into that? In that moment, I saw Ryan clearly for perhaps the first time. He wasn't worried about me or my dreams. He was worried about his own vision of the future, one where I played a safe, supporting role in his stable, predictable life. I think we want different things, I said quietly. Chloe, don't be rash. I'm not being rash. I'm being clear. You want someone who'll play it safe, who won't rock the boat, who'll fit neatly into your plans. That's not me. That's never been me. I thought you understood that, but I was wrong. We broke up that night in the parking lot. He tried to argue, tried to walk back what he'd said, but the damage was done. I drove home alone, and instead of feeling sad, I felt lighter, freer. The business took off faster than I had dared to hope. Within 6 months, I had moved out of Dad's house and into a small apartment in San Pedro, close to the port. Within a year, I had enough clients to hire my first employee. Within 18 months, I moved into a real office space in downtown Long Beach with a view of the water, the very port where I had once worked long shifts in cargo terminals. I named my company Pacific Logistics Solutions, and we specialized in helping small and medium-sized shipping companies optimize their operations. My team grew to 5 people, then 10. We were profitable, successful, and I loved every minute of it. Brooke, meanwhile, continued her downward spiral. She was fired from Pacific Gateway Packaging after 4 months for attendance issues and poor performance. She found another job, this time at a warehouse in Long Beach, but was let go from that one after 6 weeks. The pattern repeated itself. She'd get a job, struggle for a few weeks or months, get fired or quit, and then scramble to find something else to avoid violating her contract with Dad. The debt hung over her like a sword, the interest accumulating even as she made sporadic payments. At the rate she was going, it would take her years to pay it all back, maybe a decade. I sometimes wondered if I should feel guilty about the contract, about the role I'd played in creating her current situation. But when I thought back to that night, to her standing in the living room surrounded by shopping bags bought with stolen money, to her smug entitlement and complete lack of remorse, the guilt faded. She had made her choice. These were the consequences. Mom and Dad's relationship with Brooke became strained and distant. The warmth that had once characterized their interactions was replaced by tense dinners and stilted conversations. Dad, in particular, seemed to have lost whatever illusions he'd held about his younger daughter. He still loved her, I'm sure, but the disappointment was a palpable presence whenever they were in the same room. 2 years after the credit card incident, I was preparing for the West Coast Maritime Logistics Conference, one of the biggest industry events of the year. My company was sponsoring a panel discussion, and I was one of the featured speakers. It was a huge opportunity, a chance to network with potential clients and establish myself as a thought leader in the field. The conference was being held at the Hyatt Regency in downtown Los Angeles, a massive hotel and convention center complex. I arrived early on the first day, dressed in my best suit, my presentation materials perfectly organized in my leather portfolio. I felt confident, prepared, ready to represent my company on a major stage. I was walking through the hotel lobby, heading toward the convention center wing, when I decided to grab a coffee from the hotel's cafe. I had an hour before my panel started, plenty of time to caffeinate and review my notes. The cafe was busy with conference attendees, all of us in business attire, all clutching laptops and phones and coffee cups. I placed my order and waited, scrolling through emails on my phone. "Americano for table 7, a tired voice called out. I looked up absently and froze. Behind the counter, wearing a standard-issue cafe uniform with her hair pulled back in a messy bun, was Brooke. She was serving coffee, at the hotel where I was about to speak at a major industry conference. She looked exhausted, older than her 25 years, with dark circles under her eyes and a defeated slump to her shoulders that I had never seen before. She hadn't noticed me yet. She was focused on making drinks, moving mechanically through the motions. I watched her for a moment, processing this unexpected encounter. Part of me wanted to just leave, to grab my coffee and disappear into the crowd. But a larger part, the part that had spent 2 years watching my sister's life fall apart while mine soared, felt compelled to acknowledge her presence. "Brooke?" I said, approaching the counter. She looked up, her expression blank for a moment before recognition dawned. Her face went through a rapid series of emotions: shock, embarrassment, anger, shame. She opened her mouth, closed it, then finally managed to speak. "Chloe, what are you doing here?" "I'm speaking at the logistics conference. Panel discussion on supply chain optimization." I gestured at my suit, my conference badge, the portfolio tucked under my arm. The unspoken contrast hung between us. Me, a successful business owner about to address hundreds of industry professionals, and her, serving coffee in a hotel cafe. "Oh," she said quietly, That's great. Good for you. How long have you been working here?" 4 months. It's the longest I've held a job since," she trailed off, not needing to finish the sentence. "Since the credit card incident. Since the contract. Since her life imploded. Are you managing okay?" She let out a bitter laugh. "Managing? Is that what you call this? I'm 25 years old, serving coffee to people my own age who are doing actual meaningful work with their lives. I'm barely making minimum wage plus tips, and almost all of it goes to Dad for that stupid debt that just keeps growing. I'm living in a studio apartment in Koreatown that's basically a closet with a hot plate. So no, Chloe, I'm not managing okay." Other customers were waiting, and I could feel their impatience. But I couldn't just walk away. "You could have made different choices," I said, keeping my voice low. "At any point, you could have owned what you did, worked hard to make it right, changed your attitude. But you didn't." "Changed my attitude? God, you sound just like Dad. You're both so perfect, so righteous. You have no idea what it's like to be the family disappointment, to have everyone watching you, waiting for you to fail. I'm not perfect, Brooke. I just work hard. I take responsibility for my own life. That's not some impossible standard. It's just basic adulting." She looked at me with something close to hatred. "You know what the worst part is? You were right. About everything. That night, when Dad was yelling, when I had to sign that contract, when you laid out exactly how my life was going to go if I didn't change, you were right, and I hate you for it. I hate that you got to be the good daughter, the successful one, while I became this." She gestured at herself, at the cafe uniform, at the coffee-stained apron. "Miss, my coffee?" A man behind me said impatiently. "I have to go," Brooke said, turning away to grab my order. She set it on the counter without looking at me. "Enjoy the conference." I took the coffee, but I didn't leave immediately. "For what it's worth, Brooke, I never wanted this for you. I wanted you to learn, to grow, to become someone who could stand on her own, not to end up here." She finally looked at me again, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Well, you got your wish," I learned. "I grew. I'm standing on my own. Happy now?" Before I could answer, she turned away to help the next customer, dismissing me as thoroughly as if I had never existed. I walked away, my coffee bitter on my tongue, and headed toward the convention center. The panel discussion went well. I spoke about supply chain resilience, about building systems that could withstand disruption, about the importance of planning for multiple scenarios. The audience was engaged, asked good questions, and several people approached me afterward with business cards and potential opportunities. I should have felt triumphant. This was everything I had worked for: professional success, respect in my field, a thriving business. But all I could think about was Brooke, standing behind that counter in her stained apron, the defeat in her eyes. That evening, after the day's sessions ended, I sat in my hotel room and thought about the past 2 years. I thought about the contract, about my role in creating it, about whether I had been righteous or just vindictive. Had I really wanted Brooke to learn a lesson, or had I wanted to see her punished? Had I been helping or hurting her? The truth, I realized, was probably both. Yes, Brooke needed to face consequences. Yes, she had been enabled and spoiled and needed to learn responsibility. But had the lesson needed to be so harsh? Had I, in my own wounded pride and anger at her betrayal, pushed for something more punitive than instructive? I pulled out my laptop and logged into Dad's account, the one where Brooke's payments were deposited. Over 2 years, she had paid back about $6,000. With interest, she still owed nearly $18,000. At her current rate, assuming she could even keep this hotel job, it would take her 5 or 6 more years to pay it all off. 5 or 6 more years of barely surviving, of every dollar going to a debt, of living in poverty while watching her peers build careers and lives. I thought about calling Dad, about suggesting we forgive the remaining debt or at least modify the terms. But I knew what he would say. She made her choice. She has to live with it. And he wasn't wrong. She had made her choice, but so had I. I had chosen to press for the contract, to ensure she faced maximum consequences, to set up a system that would crush her under its weight. I had done it out of anger, out of years of watching her coast through life while I worked, out of a desire to finally see her face reality. Had it been worth it? I didn't call Dad. I didn't modify the contract. I finished my coffee, which had long since gone cold, and went to bed. The conference continued for 2 more days. I didn't see Brooke again, though I'm sure she was working her shifts at the cafe, serving coffee to people who probably barely noticed she existed. I gave my presentation, networked with potential clients, and represented my company well. By all objective measures, the conference was a huge success for Pacific Logistics Solutions. On the final evening, there was a reception for conference sponsors and speakers. I stood on a balcony overlooking the Los Angeles skyline, the city lights stretching out toward the horizon, and I thought about the two very different lives that had emerged from that one night 2 years ago. Brooke was still paying for her moment of entitlement and theft. She was still trapped in the consequences of that choice, working minimum wage jobs, living in poverty, with years of debt servitude still ahead of her. The girl who had once shopped on Rodeo Drive and planned luxury vacations now served coffee to conference attendees and probably worried about making rent. And me? I had built a successful business, had professional respect, had financial security and independence. I had everything I had worked for, everything I had planned and strategized to achieve. I was living proof that hard work and discipline paid off. So why did I feel so hollow? Dad was proud of me. He told me regularly, made a point of introducing me to his business associates as my daughter, the logistics expert. Mom was proud too, though in a quieter way. They both treated me differently now, with a respect that had never quite been there before. I wasn't just reliable, responsible Chloe anymore. I was successful, impressive Chloe. And Brooke? Brooke was the cautionary tale, the family failure, the daughter who couldn't get her act together. Holiday dinners were awkward, with her arriving late and leaving early, barely speaking to anyone. Her presence was a ghost of resentment and shame, a reminder of the night everything changed. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I had just let Dad handle it his own way. If I hadn't pushed for the contract, if I had shown mercy instead of justice. Would Brooke have learned her lesson without being crushed by it? Or would she have just continued down the same path of entitlement and irresponsibility? I would never know. The choice was made, the contract was signed, and the consequences had played out exactly as I had anticipated they would. Brooke was paying, would continue paying, for years to come. And I had won. I had achieved everything I set out to achieve, both personally and professionally. My business was thriving, my reputation was solid, my future was bright. I had proven that hard work and responsibility triumph over entitlement and laziness. I had proven that actions have consequences, that you can't steal your way to a better life, that eventually reality catches up with you. So why, standing on that balcony looking out over Los Angeles, did victory taste so bitter? The truth was more complicated than I wanted to admit. Yes, Brooke had betrayed me and our father. Yes, she had needed to face consequences. Yes, she had been spoiled and entitled, and needed a harsh dose of reality. But I had also enjoyed it. Some dark part of me had relished watching her fall, had felt satisfaction seeing her stripped of the privilege and ease that had always come so naturally to her. I had spent years being the responsible one, the overlooked one, the one who did everything right and rarely got recognition for it. And when Brooke's world imploded, when she finally had to struggle the way I had always struggled, part of me had felt vindicated. That was the truth I hadn't wanted to face. This wasn't just about justice or consequences or teaching a lesson. It was also about revenge. About finally seeing my sister get what I believed she deserved. About watching her suffer the way I had always felt I suffered in her shadow. Was I proud of that? No. Did it change anything? Also no. The contract stood. The debt remained. Brooke would continue working her minimum wage jobs, would continue paying Dad back, would continue living a diminished version of the life she had once taken for granted. And I would continue building my business, expanding my success, living the life I had earned through years of hard work and sacrifice. That was how the story ended. Not with forgiveness or reconciliation or some heartwarming moment of sisterly understanding. It ended with both of us exactly where our choices had led us. Me at the top, her at the bottom, and an unbridgeable gulf of resentment and recrimination between us. 6 months after the conference, I received an invitation to speak at another industry event. This one was even bigger, a national logistics summit in San Diego. It was a huge honor, confirmation that Pacific Logistics Solutions had arrived as a serious player in the field. I accepted the invitation and began preparing my presentation. This was my life now. Speaking engagements, client meetings, business strategy sessions, networking events. I was successful by every metric that mattered. I had achieved everything I had set out to achieve. And somewhere in Los Angeles, Brooke was probably still serving coffee, still living in her cramped apartment, still struggling to make her debt payments. Still paying for that one terrible decision she had made on an evening 2 years ago when she had seen a credit card and a PIN number and thought she could get away with it. The contract I had helped draft, the one that had seemed so necessary and righteous in the moment, had become exactly what I had designed it to be. A long, slow punishment that would follow her for years. She would pay back every dollar, plus interest, even if it took a decade. She would never forget what she had done, what it had cost her, what she had lost. And neither would I. Because in destroying her life, I had also destroyed whatever sisterhood we might have had. We would never be close again, never have the relationship that sisters are supposed to have. That bond was broken, shattered as completely as the trust she had violated when she took that credit card. Was it worth it? That was the question I kept coming back to, late at night when I couldn't sleep, when the success and the vindication rang hollow. I had won, completely and utterly. I had built a thriving business, earned professional respect, achieved financial independence. I had proven my worth, shown that hard work and responsibility matter, demonstrated that actions have consequences. But I had also lost something. Something I couldn't quite name, something that had nothing to do with business success or professional achievement, some fundamental connection to my own humanity, maybe. Some capacity for mercy or compassion or forgiveness that I had willingly sacrificed on the altar of justice and revenge. Brooke would pay her debt. I would continue to succeed. That was how this story would end, with both of us getting exactly what we had earned, for better or worse. And if that ending felt less triumphant than I had imagined it would, well, that was just another consequence I would have to live with. The last time I saw her was at Mom and Dad's house for Christmas, 3 years after the credit card incident. She was thin, worn down in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. She worked 2 jobs now, trying to accelerate her debt payments, the hotel cafe during the day and a late shift at a warehouse most nights. She looked a decade older than her 27 years. We barely spoke. She arrived after dinner, stayed for an hour, accepted a small gift from Mom and Dad with stiff gratitude, and left. She didn't look at me once during the entire visit. I had become invisible to her, or maybe she had made me invisible, erased me from her world as thoroughly as I had helped erase her from the life she had once known. As I watched her leave, I thought about that night again. The credit card on the desk, the shopping bags, her smug entitlement, the fury I had felt, the absolute certainty that she needed to pay for what she had done. The contract I had suggested, the system I had helped create to ensure she would suffer the maximum consequences for her actions. I had been so sure I was right. So certain that harsh justice was the only appropriate response. So convinced that Brooke needed to be crushed under the weight of her own choices in order to finally learn and grow. Now, watching her drive away in her beat-up car to her second job, I wondered if I had been right about anything at all. She had learned all right. She had learned that family could be merciless, that love had limits, that one mistake could define an entire life. She had learned to keep her head down, to expect nothing, to survive on the margins. Was that the lesson I had intended to teach her? Was this the growth I had hoped to inspire? I didn't know. And maybe that uncertainty was its own form of punishment, one I would carry for the rest of my life. I had won the battle but lost something I couldn't quite name. And in the end, maybe that was the real price of revenge. Not what it cost the other person, but what it cost you to inflict it. The debt would be paid eventually. Brooke would write that final check, and the contract would be fulfilled. She would be free of the obligation, at least on paper. But neither of us would ever be free of that night, of the choices we made and the consequences that followed. We were bound together by it, locked in our respective roles of victor and victim, neither position feeling quite as satisfying as I had imagined it would. That was the truth of revenge. It never quite delivers what it promises. You get everything you want, the justice, the consequences, the vindication, and somehow it's not enough. It doesn't fill the void, doesn't heal the wound, doesn't make you feel the way you thought you would feel. I had my successful business, my professional reputation, my father's pride and approval. I had proven that hard work and responsibility triumph over entitlement and theft. I had won. But standing in my parents' driveway, watching my sister's taillights disappear into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had both lost something far more valuable than $20,000. And unlike Brooke's debt, what we had lost could never be paid back or reclaimed. It was just gone. A casualty of the war I had helped wage, a price we would both pay forever.